What's up, everybody? So I get the question at least like once a day about, is the real estate market going to crash in Florida? And I wanted to talk about Florida in general because a lot of people like to talk about the real estate market broad across the entire United States, but I wanted to break it down to Florida because different sides of the United States are different. We're seeing a heart of migration, and on a day that the S&P 500 is down, almost 3%, and the world thinks everything is crumbling. So I wanted to spend some time talk about the real estate market on whether it is going to crash, in my opinion, or not. And as a investor and a realtor here on the Gulf Coast of Florida, I wanted to download my mind because I've been talking about this all morning with at least 5 different people on whether I think it's going to crash or not. So I'm going to break down inflation hedges. I'm going to break down Airbnbs. I'm going to break down the migration of people coming here. I'm going to break down supply constraints. I'm going to break down inventory. I'm going to break down everything that might make the market crash versus prosper or stay where it is. And if you stick to the end, I'm going to throw in one of the things that I want everybody to look out for in real estate because it's really becoming an issue, and it's something that's really hurting a lot of transactions right now that nobody is talking about. So we're going to talk about that here in this video. I don't know how long it's going to be. It's going to be as long as it needs to be so I can say, hey, this is what my mind thinks about this. And since the market is changing by the minute and the Fed is changing things by the minute, we're seeing things speed up a lot faster, both in the stock market and the real estate market. With interest rates going up and going up more as the year goes on, I'm going to talk about my thoughts on that. And let's get right to it. All right, so let's go ahead and just break this down Barney style from the top. So when the entire pandemic happened and they made interest rates go to really zero, I remember I had just bought a property right across the way here, and I was just starting to renovate it, and then that happened. And we really didn't know exactly what was going to happen, but I had an inkling that one of the biggest things in real estate is if you can get a really low interest loan, you want to start acquiring properties. Well, we didn't quite know exactly what the big boys were going to do. We were just some small real estate investors here in Pensacola. Well, we didn't really know that inflation was going to go through the roof like it has right now. I mean, we're seeing inflation at like 8.6, 8.7 CPI. Really, inflation's a lot higher than that, but that's what the government is telling us it is. And if you want a hard number, the CPI is really what we're going to look at, Consumer Price Index. So when you have a really high inflation market, something that happens like boom, like inflation is going through the roof, a lot of money is going to find a place to hedge itself, okay? And so when we have 8.7% inflation, and if you've got cash in the ground or in a bank account, you're getting it eroded at 8.7%. So if you've got hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars, or if you're a hedge fund, you have millions of dollars getting eroded at 8.7%, really higher than that, but 8.7%. And if you factor in the stock market right now is getting crushed, I mean, this is Wednesday, the 18th of May, okay, 2022. And I want to make that very clear that it's this time until I see something change. Right now, crypto is down. The stock market is down. S&P 500 is down almost 15%. Okay, there's really not a great place for money to go. Banks aren't paying anything really. Capital has really nowhere to go but stay in the real estate market. When we look at what is a building has a cost to be produced, and now it has comparable value. The comps now on real estate are up. Everything has been sold at high prices. So when we have high comps and we have a high cost to reproduce that building, we have a market price that is up. And in order for that to come down, either we have supply of building materials get manufactured at an alarming rate to bring the supply costs of screws, nails, bolts, plywood, 2x4s, concrete back down to where the cost to reproduce that building is brought down, or the Fed the guys that make the interest rates drive interest rates so high that it slams on the brake of the economy, and basically nobody can afford the capital to acquire the property, right? So interest rates going, like right now, I think we're at almost 6%, going into a little over 6% if we get 2 rate hikes by the end of this year of 0.5, 0.5, okay? But if interest rates cannot catch inflation, and if there's still a gap there where you can borrow money cheaper than inflation is, people are going to keep borrowing money cheaper as long as interest rates, as long as inflation stays up, okay? Because like most of my thoughts are as an investor. And when I still talk to my investor buddies and they're like, I'm still buying properties because I can still get the money cheaper than inflation, and then rent rates are above that or Airbnb numbers are above that, they're going to keep investing and keep acquiring properties. So if people are paying up for a cap rate, trailer parks and apartment buildings that used to sell at 11 cap are now selling at 5 caps and 6 caps, and they're okay with that, then there's no reason for the market to go back down. Because if you're paying up on the multiple of money, you're paying up for this dingy trailer park that's really bad, because you're willing to get an 11 cap and go through all the problems of getting a really high return. But now you're doing that on a 6 cap and people are still doing it and there's nowhere else for the money to go. The market's just going to stay up. And I'm using a trailer park as an example that it could be the same rundown house, or it could be the same in a middle class, $400,000 house. The return, people are okay with it. They're still buying that return. So this brings me to my next point of supply. Here on the Gulf Coast of Florida, Florida in general, the amount of inventory that is out there is very little. So I want to look at 2 things, okay? I look at the bottom of the market and the extreme top of the market. And, when you look at real estate numbers, like what the Board of Realtors will send out or what the people on the news will send out, they will send out broad-based numbers. And the way I look at it is top and bottom. Because as an investor, I always wanted to invest at the bottom of the market because that was the properties that I could afford to buy at that time and buy them cash. So when I looked at the bottom of the market today for a client, he was like, I want to buy a house for $200,000. And I look at $200,000 and below, and the amount of inventory that was out there is shockingly low, okay? And when I look at what builders are building here on the Gulf Coast, it's that 400,000 and above house, right? Not the 120 contractor grade, cute little cottage house for the blue collar worker. It's the, I make $70,000 to $80,000 and above, and I can afford a $500,000 house. That's what's being built here right now. And I understand that because from a banker's standpoint, they want a note that will make them enough money. The people building the houses are selling notes. They're also mortgagers. They have their own title company. They have their own everything in-house to where they can sell a 6% note to somebody at $500,000 and they can resell that note really fast. So they're overbuilding to the higher, group. The blue collar worker, if you look at 200,000 and below or 180 and below, here on the Gulf Coast, there is nothing that is livable. It is shockingly hard to find that's livable. So if there's nothing being built for that 200,000 and below, the supply is basically gone and they have to be renters, okay? So if they're the renters and everything being built is for the upper middle, we have a problem. And so when I look at the top category of the $1 million, $2 million properties, those are still being bought and some are being bought with cash. And so if the bottom is having problems with even finding something and the top is not saying I can't afford the $2 million and falling down into that $500,000, $400,000 price point here, and they're still competing for those new builds, we're still going to have a supply problem. So that's where my mind is going on that. So for supply, there's not much. So another thing I wanted to add is most of these people that are thinking of selling their house, they really have nowhere to go. So if a market just goes straight up, you're just paying up for the next property. So without a market going up and down, buying low, selling high, and then buying back low, you're just paying up for the next property. And people have kind of said, well, where am I going to go? Keeping prices where they're at. And the whole idea of interest rates going up through the roof is to slow down the market to the point where prices start to fall because houses are sitting on the market. Are they starting to sell on the market? Yeah, a little more. But people are still buying them. And I think we're seeing a war between real estate agents and property owners overpricing their houses and having to bring them back down versus where interest rates are slowing people down from buying the house. So we got to really look rationally at both those things. So in that category, I think people are still buying houses and there's still going to be the price held up for now. Which brings me into my next point, which is rent rate versus prices, okay? So when you evaluate a property as a real estate investor, you are saying, okay, everybody says the 1% rule. If it's a $100,000 house, it needs to rent for $1,000 a month, okay? And that's the 1% rule. So you see a correlation between rent and the amount of capital it takes to buy a property, your price. Okay, so what we have seen is the price of the property has gone through the roof, okay? It has just kept going up, and rents have to correlate with the price of the property. And what we're starting to see now is rent is starting to try to catch the price. And until really that happens, we can't see like, and I know some people are going to disagree with me on this, especially the older agents. Until we see that there is a correlation between the two, just like a stock, you know, your dividend versus price, the amount you're paying for the stock, until we see a correlation or they equal out, the market and the price is going to be very interesting. So if we also factor in those renters that I said at the bottom of the market that have nowhere to go or having to rent, well, the rents are just going to go up because there's no supply for renters. Like right now in Pensacola, if you post a rental on the market, it'll be gone like that because there's nowhere for people to live. They're begging for rentals because there's been so many people move here from out of town. Like just about everybody I worked with last year and this year have been from somewhere else in the United States moving to here. And since they can work remotely, they want to work here. So the ones that could afford it bought houses and the ones that couldn't rent. So there's just not enough inventory here on the Gulf Coast. And to make things worse is that two things are going to happen. One, taxes on the properties are going up because they're changing hands and they can reevaluate the amount of taxes that the government is pulling from property tax, which the government is happy for that. And the other one, and this is my last point, is insurance is really becoming a problem, okay? So if we think about insurance here on the Gulf Coast, everybody thinks about hurricanes and natural disasters, flooding. Well, insurance companies are basically saying, hey, these are my terms for insuring a house, and if you don't fall underneath that, sorry, okay? So if it's an older home, the 4-point, the roof, the HVAC, the plumbing, you know, the electrical, if that is old and not up to their standard, they're like, you know what, we're not going to insure you. And if you're getting a mortgage on a house, this is the point of mortgageability costs. If you're getting a mortgage on that house, you're going to pay up for insurance, okay? A lot. And if it's an older house, let's say roof over 15 years old, old school wiring, let's say aluminum or paper or cloth wiring, the old crumbly stuff, or galvanized piping or anything like that, you're going to pay up for that insurance policy. if they'll even let you get it at all. So mortgageability is going to be a problem. You might not be able to close on that property, or previous owners have to fix something or redo something, or you buy cash. So that is going to be one of the major issues for buying a house. And as a property owner here, my insurance has gone up almost 55%. And that's what a lot of people are seeing it go up on. So will people be able to afford properties here? Yes, they're just going to have to pay up for these things. It's the cost of living by the water. It's not going to keep people from buying houses, but it's going to make it problematic. So in summation of all that, and I had to lay that out for me to say this, that I do not see the real estate market going down anytime soon. I see it slowing down. And the school of thought, for every 1 point of interest going up, 10% of value should be subtracted from the house. Well, not if there's a supply constraint, not if there's other outlying factors like thousands of people moving to one spot. Will make that price change. So as of right now, with interest rates where they are and the situation of everybody moving here, there's no reason for the properties to just capitulate other than a major financial catastrophe. Like, let's say the stock market capitulates and 5 million people become unemployed, okay? Or that, the economy gets so crummy that people just cannot transact. Or that interest rates or any type of other financial issue happens to where people cannot close properties. Then we will see the market start to come down. Give credit to the money printer going brr, okay? When you print, let's say $3 trillion, you have to issue $3 trillion in debt, okay? That's how the fiat currency world works, and with the velocity of money and all that goodness. So when the only really place to send that debt out to is the real estate mortgage world. And when the real estate market is the backbone of the U.S. economy and debt and movement of credit around the industry, we get an inflated real estate market and we get inflated real estate prices, and they're just going to stay that high because it's called inflation. You printed a bunch of money. Now you got to live with it, and it's pretty sad to think about it. That's another reason why I don't think the market's going to go down. There's just a lot more money out there, so things cost more of it. They diluted it with a lot of cash. I do have a theory about Airbnbs being a bubble, and I might make a video on that. I think that people are overvaluing what they're paying for properties, thinking that Airbnb is going to be their numbers, and I think they're wrong on that. I will lay that all out on another video. But I hope this all makes sense. I've talked my piece. We're at like 19 minutes, and that's my thoughts on the real estate market as of right now, the 18th of May. And I think this will last for the next 5 or 6 months to a year, and then the game will probably change because the scenario will be different. The scenario is changing so fast because of social media, the media, and the Fed moving everything around, that I hope this all makes sense. It will change by the day. Keep your ears on, and like and subscribe and comment down below if you disagree with me. You're allowed to debate, because debate is how we get to points. And I'll see you guys in the next video.